even Manmohan Singh, he was mentor of Manmohan Singh, who stood like a rock behind Manmohan Singh while he was implementing those economic reforms. It was, as I say, that it was primarily the idea of PV Narsimha Rao that, and it was the backing of him which give courage to the whole leadership to go ahead and implement those reforms.
That's right. I mean, look, at the end of the day, any major policy at the national level has to be led by the Prime Minister. In fact, Narsimha Rao famously told somebody, and I have mentioned that in my book, that when he was asked, who is the author of liberalization? Is it you or is it Dr. Manmohan Singh? He said, look, the finance minister's power is like a zero. His power depends on the number you place in front of him. Whether you put 1 or 9, the power is defined by what you put in front of him. And that person is the Prime Minister. In other words, it's the Prime Minister who defines the power of the Finance Minister. If the Prime Minister wants something done, the Finance Minister will do it. And therefore, when people attribute policy reform to whether it's Dr. Manmohan Singh in the past or later on, whether Yashwant Sinha or Arun Jaitley or Nirmala Sitharaman, whatever they've been able to do, because of the support of the Prime Minister.
It is because of the vision of the Prime Minister, Finance Minister can have courage or can implement some major reforms. Before we conclude this show, Sanjay Baruji, I would like to understand from you that how shall we remember former Prime Minister of India, PV Narsimha Rao, who was a visionary, who put forth India to the path of self-reliance and prosperity. How shall we remember him?
Well, I think we have to remember him by 1991, which is why the title of my book was 1991. We have to remember him for what he did in that 1 year. He saved the Congress party when it was in the midst of a huge, unprecedented crisis. Both the assassinations of Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi had deeply wounded the party. So in a sense, he was able to keep the party united, which is a great feat. Today you can see how the party is dividing itself under Rahul Gandhi's, Sonia's leadership. I mean, Jyotiraditya Scindia is leaving, Sachin Pilot is leaving, Jagan Mohan Reddy left earlier. But in that period of 91, when there was a party was in crisis, he kept it united. That was his political contribution. The Cold War ended, but he gave direction to India's foreign policy for the post-Cold War era. That was his foreign policy contribution. That again was 1991. And finally, of course, the economic liberalization. There was a deep crisis. India was on the verge of default. India had never defaulted. And if he had defaulted, that would have been a huge negative development for the country. But he prevented default and was able to save the economic dignity of the country. So, three major fronts, three major initiatives, 1995. That's why I say in my book, 1991 defined Narsimha Rao. Narsimha Rao defined 1991.
1991 defined Narsimha Rao and 1991 defined... Yes. So thank you so much, PV. Thank you so much for talking to us about PV Narsimha Rao, how he made history, how he defined 1991 and how 1991 defined him. So thank you so much, Sanjaya Baruji, former media advisor to the Prime Minister of India during 2004 to 2008, and you were chief editor of Financial Express and Business Standard, and you served as the edit page editor of Times of India and editor of Economic Times. Thank you so much for talking to us and sharing your experience with us. Thank you.
Thank you.